Chapter 5. I operate according to a definite, unerring law. I know the outcome before I start. There was nothing for me to do but settle down as best as I could and wait and hope, while my friend plunged back into his former occupation in the stock market. He remained quite secretive, and his friends knew little of his affairs, though we met him occasionally at the club. None of us seemed to have the courage to ask him about the changes in his life, and he talked about everything but that. In a short time, however, his activities reached such proportions he had to involve a few of his close friends, including myself. It was then that I learned the magnitude of his endeavors. I feared that his success could not last, and I attempted to advise him to use greater caution, warning him that someday his bubble would burst. He answered with complete confidence. He said, "You don't have to worry about me. I operate according to a definite, unerring law. If you wanted to get the square footage of this room, you would get the two dimensions, and then, following a process laid down by the law of mathematics, you would get a definite result. You would be certain of the success of the process from the beginning. It's just the same with my work. I know the outcome before I start." That was the last time I ever questioned his affairs, and he never mentioned them again. There seemed to be no stopping him. He went from one success to another. His energy and vitality never lagged, and the dynamic force with which he seemed to command every situation and overwhelm all opposition to his progress seemed almost superhuman. At the few social gatherings he attended, his magnetic personality and the mystery his name came to be associated with made him the center of attention. But he seemed to want to avoid this kind of attention, and I saw very little of him for some time. I heard no news of the master, and had just about become resigned to my fate, when my friend's secretary called saying there was a letter at his office that might interest me. It was just a brief note addressed to my friend, written on the stationery of a prominent hotel in a distant city. "Detained by important affairs. Regret to have to cancel a visit to you at this time. Your friend." My chance had come at last. The hotel was my only clue, but it was enough. 3 interested friends and I quickly left town and drove eastward on our quest for the master and his secret. The drive was a long one, but we took turns at the wheel and drove straight through. At the hotel, I went directly to the manager and informed him of our mission. He told me that, because there were so many visitors who were crowding around the master, he had departed, leaving no address. He had no further information to give us. Once again, I was disheartened. Was I ever to learn his secret? It seemed unlikely. We decided, however, to continue our search. We separated to work more effectively and continued searching for 5 days and nights. On the 5th night, my friends spent an hour trying to persuade me to return home. But I decided that I would not give up. I would continue the search forever if necessary. They retired to their rooms, and I sat alone in a deserted corner of the lobby until early morning. Suddenly, my feelings changed from despondency to absolute joy. Somehow I knew that my search was at an end. I felt a sense of a presence behind me. And then a hand touched my shoulder. I turned and looked into the most magnificent face I have ever seen. His eyes sparkled like jewels. "Are you waiting for me?" he asked. "I am," I answered, for I knew I had found the man I had been looking for. We talked briefly. He said he was so busy that there was no way he could give me any instructions, and that he was not even receiving any visitors during his short stay. He promised, however, to contact me as soon as he was available. I told him that I was desperately in need of him, that we had come thousands of miles to learn his wisdom, and that I was willing to sacrifice anything for just a little of his knowledge. The intensity of my words must have aroused his compassion, for he agreed to receive us for instructions the following morning in his apartment. Chapter 6. If you use these principles wisely and intelligently, there can be no uncertainty as to the outcome of any endeavor and no limit to your possibilities. The first sight of his apartment will always stand out vividly in my memory. Never before or since have I seen such luxury displayed as in the furnishings of that place. We were led by his assistant through a room delicately perfumed by an abundance of beautifully arranged flowers, across magnificent silk rugs, to a room that appeared to be his study, where chairs had already been placed for us. He entered immediately, and we had a round of introductions, with names and occupations and general remarks. I had expected, because of his luxuriant surroundings, to see him extravagantly dressed, but I was struck by the simplicity of both his dress and his bearing. My impression was that, being conscious of his power, he had no need for ostentation and would rather not be the object of any attention. He explained the loveliness of his rooms by simply saying that he loved beautiful things and therefore surrounded himself with them. He began our instructions by saying, "You may have come here expecting to see a mysterious being. You may have come here expecting to see a mysterious being endowed with mystic powers, a sort of magician who can pull a fortune out of the air and pass it over to you. If so, you have very much misled yourselves. I am just an ordinary man, no different than you are. The world calls me a master, and so I am, but only in the sense that I have learned how to master circumstances and situations in my life. I have developed the powers in me that abide in all of us. I realize that you have come here because of your faith in me, and that you hold me in high regard as a successful individual. But in order to gain the greatest benefit from these teachings, I must ask you to wipe out, as fully as you can, any impression you may have of me as a personality. I am worthy of no special honor or special consideration. I am just as human as you are. I'm not superior in any way. I made no discoveries. I received these instructions in much the same way that I am about to give them to you, and I am eternally thankful for the knowledge that I have gained. You will have no difficulty in putting these principles into practice in your everyday lives. They are as available to you as to me, for this great law applies to everyone. It is the highest and most effective law possible in the worldly affairs, and is well worth learning, for its practice results in a life that is well worth living. If you use these principles wisely and intelligently, there can be no uncertainty as to the outcome of any endeavor, and no limit to your possibilities. As you go on, your confidence will increase, and you will find that your powers will increase. You will accomplish greater things with greater ease and greater speed. As its growth in you increases, your accomplishments will increase as well. With some people, like your friend who is responsible for your being here today, remarkable improvements comes quickly. With others, the growth is more gradual. The difference is not any difference in the individual, for all of us are endowed with the same capacity, but it is a difference in the degree of intensity employed. No one could ever receive these instructions, however, and not become a better person for them. No great things are accomplished in the consciousness of personality. That is impossible, for personality is limiting. You may not understand yet what I mean by this, but you will soon. For now, just remember that it is important to accept these lessons for what they mean to you as an individual. Don't let my presence or your impression of me influence you in any way in your studies. Learn from my words only, not from me. Now, let us proceed.